This year, KBIS brought a whole new energy. And it really did. This new energy and vibe was brought on by a number of issues on the minds of both design creatives and their clients, and the brands that hope to be included in future projects. I think it was also fueled by a discomfort, one that many, if not most of us, are feeling by the political chaos created through this new administration. Now listen, before you get tribal on me, hear me out. Regardless for whom you voted, when a new administration comes in, they get to make the changes like they see fit. And it doesn't really matter if you agree or disagree. It is a fact of life, and elections have consequences, right? So that was the topic of discussion that elevated above most others, but in conjunction with other issues that we discussed. It was an amazing experience. KBIS this year was fantastic. And I believe that this discomfort being felt right now has motivated many creatives to re-engage in their business and recommit to their craft, despite the headwinds coming our way. And you are going to hear some of those conversations. KBIS, the Kitchen and Bath Industry Show, in partnership with the National Kitchen and Bath Association, is one of the few must-attend shows. The event itself is 3 days of brands, talks, programming, events, and happenings, while combined with the International Builders Show in the same footprint of the Las Vegas Convention Center. Like 1 million square feet. Every time I go to this show, I am motivated. And every first-time attendee to the show is just gobsmacked by the sheer volume of people and product. Even those who are veterans of the event seem annually perplexed and surprised by the amount of walking, talking, and lack of physical preparedness required to fully navigate this show. KBIS is on my list of annual must-attend events for specifiers, designers, architects, and design build firms. Why? There are a few reasons for this, and following is a comprehensive, possibly incomplete, but significant nonetheless. It's about networking, surprise and delight, learning and education, and so much more. As part of my KBIS experience this year, I was asked to host the very first KBIS podcast studio. This was an enclosed studio within the South Hall and featured podcasts from across the country executing their own programming as they saw fit in front of a live audience of event attending peers. I absolutely relish the opportunity to work live. I love working live. This opportunity to work without a safety net is both exciting and allows me to break that third wall and elicit live responses to some of the ideas being discussed. You are going to hear these conversations over the next 7 weeks in a limited series called KBIS Confidential, Creative Conversations Live from KBIS 2025. This is part 2 of 7, called Beyond the Blueprint, a personal approach to design with Moen. You know, many of the world's most innovative brands began with an aha moment, right? Moen's aha moment came in 1937, Seattle. Al Moen, his old-fashioned handle broke off in his hand. That moment led to the inspiration for the single-handle faucet, a revolutionary moment in plumbing and the beginning of a story that continues to evolve. It's been said that industrial designers are a combination of engineer, therapist, artisan, and sales pro. It is so true. Where does the next big idea come from? How's it ideated, modeled, rendered, and selected for production? How are aesthetic, functionality, and materiality selected? And how do these ideas relate to trends and market data? This is the story of brand evolution through product development. While science and engineering are their own unique elements to this, there's a collision with the playful mindset, the anatomy of brand attraction, right? And the importance of design while respecting the products that deliver our most valuable resource, water. This conversation features Sam Cahill, lead industrial designer, Moen and House of Rohl, and Alisha Snyder, senior industrial designer for Moen. Concepts discussed here include anatomy of the Moen brand, the value of trends and market data, selling an idea, how designs are ideated, modeled, rendered, and selected, market data sets, geographic influence, from draft to showroom, the process, working with the design community, generating a reaction. That was a good one, by the way. And brand evolution, as in what's next. So listen, this is a fantastic conversation, the likes of which we really don't get to participate in that often with the engineering folks, because you're going to hear a whole different side of the business. And I hope you enjoy it like I did. Iffy, there we go. First one of the day, trying to figure out if it's loud enough.
Ooh, guinea pigs.
Oh boy.
Guinea pigs. Okay, I'll take it.
And we're in like one of their environments too.
Do you feel guinea piggy today? First one of the day. I always do.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough.
I always do a little bit.
Comes with the territory, I think.
It does. Well, hey, welcome to KBIS 2025.
5.
Wow.
Go figure.
Yeah.
It's 2025. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no, thanks for being here. This is the first one of the day, which I absolutely love, because by the last one of the day, the jitters are kind of gone. The coffee's kind of settled down a little bit.
This is full jitter.
Full jitter?
Yeah, we're doing this.
Are you
full
properly
jitter.
caffeinated?
I think so. I hope so.
I love it. Okay.
I feel like it.
Alicia, Sam, with Moen, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Do me a favor. We're going to get into a bunch of stuff, and I'm really excited for this conversation. First, set the table for me. Give me the background. Alisha, let's start with you.
Okay. I'm Alisha Snyder. I'm an industrial designer and product developer. My favorite part of my career is trend strategy and directional work. I love building the foundation of the product and projects that we're working on. It's the jumping off point for our exploration. It's the part that I get the most excited about. So excited to be here and talk about it.
Sam Cahill. I have been in the design world for about 15 years. 10 of those is focused on kitchen and bath hardware, and a little bit of that was furniture design and interior homewares, but all around the home.
I love that. You know, it's interesting. So when we had a call to prep for this, and I love this conversation because it is rare that we get an opportunity to have a conversation about what happens before product winds up, not just on the project, not just at the showroom, but how it gets there. And that's what we're going to talk about today. You know, just some ideas as we were leading into this is kind of like this idea that many of the world's most innovative brands began with this aha moment, right? And Moen's aha moment came in 1937, Seattle, of all places, right? Al Moen broke off a handle. And the rest is history. I mean, a lot's happened since then, but the rest really is history. This idea of where the next big idea comes from. So if we backtrack from that just a little bit, talk to me about where big ideas come from. When you wake up in the morning, and it's not the broad question, it's like when you wake up every morning, what's on your mind? It can't be, I'm not going to answer for you because that would be a terrible show, but what is the idea? What is the goal?
I'm going to take a stab at this.
Sure.
So, as a designer, if I'm like really taking a step back is to it's all about authenticity. It's trying to come up with something that hasn't been done before, being unique, being let's see. I think in the faucet design world.
Let me rephrase.
Yeah.
That's
such a big question.
I was going to say, I've got one for you,
Yeah.
too. I think, like, you said authenticity, right? That's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's as human as possible. At the end of the day, we're people. I think that there's a misconception around the people we are and what we do. Like, oh, we're very creative, hide us from the light, put us in our little dungeon, we'll be alone, don't come visit us, don't come talk to us. At the end of the day, we're very human people. We have human experiences, and I think some of the joy of what we get to do every day is to have sensitivity to that experience and to be able to solve for it, to make it better, to make it easier, to keep people from scalding their hands, which is ultimately the Moen innovation you were alluding to.
Well, I mean, look, let's get to the brass tacks of this, right? So we're at KBIS, and we've got thousands, tens of thousands of specifiers who are looking at product because they've got the projects of their clients on their minds. They never meet you.
Yeah.
You're the ones that are responsible for those products being what they're looking at and what their clients are falling in love with. I would imagine you probably don't wake up thinking about that.
No. Definitely not. I mean, it's too overwhelming. I think that would be paralyzing to anyone. The opportunity is huge, and we care deeply about our stakeholders, and we care deeply about meeting their needs and hearing their needs, but I think the starting point is a little bit more like ephemeral, maybe a little more like abstract than that.
So what I love about design is coming up with a detail, and it really is getting down to the details, and it's coming up with something I haven't seen before, and that goes back to that authenticity thing. And so we feel like sometimes you go to work thinking that you have sketched absolutely every single faucet handle there is, but then when you start combining things, or you look in other totally different places for inspiration, you have a little aha moment. And you figure out how to combine a couple things to come up with something new. I could talk about like how it starts, how the process starts. For me, it's in a sketchbook, and Alisha and I are both we have an art and design background. So before I was a designer, before I learned how to be a designer, I was a painter. And before I was a painter, I was a sketcher. So sketching and painting, the classical, those classical fine arts, that's sort of like the foundation of where we came from. And so that's what we love to do. That's what I love to do, at least, since I was young. And that's how, I want to start my projects today, even at work. I want to start with sketching, and when I sketch, I just try to dump everything. I mean, there's scribbles. I have my sketchbook right here, and if anyone wants to see, find me in the show. I'll show you. There's actual faucet sketches in here of what turned out to be the faucets in the booth today. Where is I going? Yeah, it's just dumping what's in your brain onto paper so you can come back to it later and making it look prettier, basically, putting it together in a more presentable way.
Listen, and I think part of that is kind of being beholden to market-driven data. And it's funny because in this industry, we talk about trends, and I think that the word trend has become sort of like a bad word.
Yeah.
It's actually a remarkable business tool. It's when things get trendy that it's bad. And if you're producing something that's trendy, the ship is kind of already sailed, right? How do you use market data? How do you use actual consumer trends? How do you use that kind of data to craft what's going to be in the showroom in years from now?
It's really interesting because we can't look directly at our industry for market data to drive development because of how far ahead we are working at any moment. So we are looking globally. We're looking at furniture. We're looking at high-end designers. We're looking at architecture. We're really looking all over the place. And then we're also looking at macro trends that are kind of grounding and telling the stories of what people are up to and what's on people's minds at any given moment. And so from there, we do a lot of synthesis information. We bounce a lot of ideas back and forth within the studio. It's always one of my favorite parts of the process because that's where a good bit of the alchemy kind of gets started. We all get on the same page. We all pressure test these trends to say, okay, does this seem like the thing that's going to hit. And then we can start cross-checking with market data. We can start looking at what are the color trends, what are the big color companies doing in the industry, and then from there everything starts to like peter out, and that's where again rubber hits the road. If we've done our job, then that means that what we're coming to market with is going to be relevant when all of those other factors start to play out. So we're all kind of guessing towards a similar conclusion, but we're working really far ahead with it because, you know, a project for us is anywhere between, who knows, it could be 2 years, it could be 5 years, it could be more, it could be less. And so that's just really, you have to aim for where your target's going to be, not where it is. And that is, it's imperfect, but that's what makes it fun.
Can I add something to that? So, as far as, you know, trend versus a style, you know, styles are, this is an example. So 15 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, is when we sort of saw that emergence of like that industrial style. And it was a trend back then. And we're all like, I don't know, is this kind of gimmicky? You know, it's kind of replicating, you know, this whole like nuts and bolts and pipes and things like that. But like, man, it's really sweeping like the interior design world. But it's probably just a trend. It's probably going to go away. I don't know how much we want to pour into this, but it didn't. It's like it evolved. It's not so literally like you're making stuff out of like pipes and, you know, shoulders and fittings, but it has evolved into more like intentional shapes and forms that, depending on what finish you put on them, it could swing traditional. If it's matte black, you know, it still swings industrial, but you put like a brushed gold finish on it, like these kind of tailored industrial shapes. So I know, trend, I feel like it is kind of like a style now, and it's pure plumbing. It's like what plumbing looks like, you know, without any additional ornament on it. So
yeah. It's interesting,
trends
right?
can turn into styles.
There's like fashion, and then there's style, and then there's trends. And fashion's what happens season by season. There are trends, which are basically like little pieces that are popping up like blips around fashion as it's coming out season by season. But style is ever-changing. It's hyper-personalized. It is very much, I don't want to say you have it or you don't. Everyone has it to a different degree, and some people will appreciate it, and some people will absolutely, you know, not appreciate it, not want anything to do with it. Very polarizing. You can't necessarily teach style, and it's, I think, our biggest tastemaker, our most important stakeholder in our process, at least externally, if we're talking about like our interior design council and people that we're working with on a regular basis, even customers when we go visit them. We're trying to understand how to meet their style needs, knowing that ultimately as a marketing-driven company, we are, you know, looking to the trends and fashion of the time. So all three of those things kind of coalesce at the end of the day when we're building that target.
We are here at KBIS 2025 in the KBIS podcast studio, which I love this. I really do. I'm kind of nerding out a little bit. I love this. And it's being presented by AJ Madison and AJ Madison Pro. Huge partners, and so appreciative to them for doing this, for allowing us to have a conversation like this, because look, the tens of thousands of people that are walking around the show that are touching and feeling product, because you come here to touch and feel it, because you can't see it on social media. You can't touch, you can see it, but you can't touch it. You can't get that tactile satisfaction from it, right? You can't get the performative nature of what it feels like when it turns in your hand. Right? See, I'm nerding out a little bit because I really do love this. Take me through the process of ideation, modeling, rendering, testing, before it gets here, before it gets into the showroom. Take me through the process.
Okay, so some of you might be familiar with our new kitchen pull down the Smith collection. I was involved from start to finish with the Smith. It's not my project, but or my design.
It's our project.
That's how it starts. It starts with the six or so designers. We know we're going to do a kitchen. We know we want it to be traditional leaning. we are looking at our portfolio and we notice that like all of our kitchen, they have U-shaped spouts. Well, what about a spout that's flat on top? We don't really have. So we're starting to like create the constraints for the project up front. But after that, like the floodgates open. We try to get out of the studio. We try to basically get out of the studio, look at pretty things, and sketch a lot. So 6 of us went down to the Cleveland Public Library, which is like this old stately, historical building. Beautiful architecture on the outside, and the inside is just as beautiful. And we sat down at a big library table, checked out a bunch of books, and we just covered the table with papers and sketches. Anything from a full faucet to a small handle. But that's how it starts. It's, top of the funnel. It's tons and tons of sketches. We slowly narrow it down as far as like what's unique, what we're really gravitating to, like what handle do we really love. Oh, this handle's got some texture on it. We haven't done something like that in a while. Let's put some texture on it. Like, that's cool. All right, it's got to have texture. It's got to. Then we start kind of identifying what it should be. After that, we try to come up with like 5 really good designs, 5 or 10 really solid, fully thought out designs that we will build those in CAD, create renderings, create 3D models, like actual physical models of them, and we'll test them. Like, all right, it's been internal for so long, let's see if anyone else thinks these are beautiful. And from there, it's just seeing what raises to the top, floats to the top, and
let me stop you there for a second, because I want to ask you, what does that mean? Seems what flows to the top.
Yeah.
Because what we're going to get to in a minute is selling an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But when you say what flows to the top, what does that mean?
Why do people love what they love?
Who's the arbitrator?
Who's attracted, or what does attraction mean? We're talking showroom folks. We're talking folks inside the building. We're just designers, all kinds of people.
Yep.
But I don't know, what is it about a design that someone thinks is beautiful, or like can they explain it, or does it fill like a hole that they're really yearning for, or does it remind them of something, and that's why they like it? But yeah, why? That's always. Or is it just like the proportions are just right, that it is like a subconscious thing that is like classically beautiful and I can't explain it?
Who are the stakeholders? Are they showroom partners? Are they industry partners? Are they designers? Are they internal? Is it management? Who are the stakeholders that are making this determination?
The designers are trusted a lot with coming up with something beautiful, because our job is to fully immerse ourselves into shows like this and understand what is out there, what is unique, and what's right for the company. But obviously we can't keep it internal. We have to bounce it off to some folks outside the building.
We all really value our partnerships with our showroom customers. It just depends on like the ultimate target of the project, but for Smith, definitely the showrooms and the designers, certainly. So the specifiers, people who are going to be going in, working with their clients, pitching mood boards, and then of course like the folks who are going to be selling it off the wall. Yeah, those are the big ones, especially when we're talking premium.
Yeah.
Tell me about selling your idea. Because I think there's this misconception that everything happens in a vacuum.
Oh yeah.
A product is drawn, it's designed, it's modeled, it's rendered, it's produced on a prototype, and then it's mass produced and sent out. That's probably the misconception, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things that is often overlooked, and I can say this very literally about Sam and I because our education overlaps, we had to stand and deliver for absolutely every single project we ever did in school. It was stand in front of your peers and take their criticism, better or worse, right? And it really, I see you cringing, it builds character.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like, if one opinion is going to make or break you about one project you've worked on in a snippet of time, you might not be in the right business, right? So we really value conversations, and as Sam was saying in the research, we want people to articulate to us. It's not just about the quantitative feedback. We're looking at the qualitative feedback and saying, what did you love about this? What did you not like about it if you didn't like it? Or you were in the middle of the road. What's the deal? What's going on? We really, really value all of those little snippets and details because it gives us ammunition to then go to the business to say, okay, we tested all of these. This is the summary of the feedback, because no one has time to go through point by point. That's our job. And then we're able to socialize it throughout the business to say, okay, this is the direction that we're going. And then when it's time to go up to the bigger business leadership to say this is what we're all working on, we have these little snippets of information that we're able to reference that, again, come from the stakeholders, but are re-articulating essentially our idea, our design back to us. So it's a very circular process, but I don't think that there's anything that we treat as negligible. We're kind of like little hoarders in the studio, little like sound bites from people, sketches. Like, we're constantly keeping these things and being able to like bring them up to reference them so that we can argue for the best possible outcome.
And we never show anything that we don't like, because
Exactly.
that will end up getting picked. That's like Murphy's Law.
We always do reviews in the studio first.
Anything
We're
that
always
we
editing.
send outside of the studio, we all have like total confidence in it.
Yep.
And we're
What is your internal vetting process?
So-
Like how do you bulletproof an idea?
Yeah.
sticky notes.
We're constantly in conversation. We review internally within our team, and that's always really kind of where the meat of the conversation happens, I would say. Once you start getting outside of that group, because again, we all did that stand and deliver, that criticism, presentation skills, kind of development work early in our careers. Once you get out of that environment, you start getting a lot of, I like that, I don't like that, I love it, I hate it, a lot of 4-letter words, oh, that's cool. Those are things that are really, little ego boost. It's always nice to hear. It's nice to hear a preference, but like that critical articulation is so important for us when we're trying to build a story, when we're trying to find the deepest, darkest, like best footing for a design.
Yeah, and we want love or hate. We want extreme reactions.
Yeah.
We don't want any vanilla react. We're not like, oh, I don't know, that's okay.
fine.
That's like, it's so boring. Like,
Yeah.
we want to cause a ruckus.
Yeah.
We want people to hate something because some other people might love that same thing. And like,
Yeah.
to me, that's exciting.
We have to push, especially
Yeah.
when given the opportunity.
Compare and contrast your pitch session, your sales session, between that in a professional setting at Moen versus when you were back at school. Is it as rigorous?
It's hard to say, right?
School was pretty brutal.
It was pretty
Yeah.
brutal.
It was pretty brutal.
It was pretty brutal, especially because, you're arm in arm with people, or you're spending late nights, who was like at the studio goofing off. So like,
And it's it's like an 8 or 9 or 10 hour day, one after another.
yeah, it's a good opportunity to punish somebody if you're, if you made somebody upset.
And in school you're often looking at like the whole project.
Yeah.
You're presenting a lot, and you're presenting research, and we are doing that in work. But at work and studio, things are broken down into different parts, and
Yeah.
it's a little more laid back. But we still have to get up there and sell the idea.
Professionalism helps a lot with that environment. People are a little bit more polished, maybe a little more offline, but at the end of the day, I think we've really cultivated a culture where people feel comfortable to say we don't like this, because they understand that there is benefit to being honest and articulating why. If you can't say why, it doesn't do anything for me, but if you can tell me why you don't like it, I want to hear it. That's important.
And by the way, I'm drilling down on this because I think it's incredibly important, and because we don't get to have conversations like this very often. We really don't. The narrative in the industry is you'll see something on social, you'll see something on Instagram, and you'll be like, oh, yeah, I designed that. That's so cool. But you don't ever get to see the end user, how they use it with their kids, with their family, the performative nature where form and function meet in a fully designed, fully fleshed out environment. It's so important to have these conversations because that's everything. And so I'm curious about the sales process and about, how do you harden your designs? How do you make a pitch bulletproof if you really, really believe in one of your designs because of all the work that went into it, knowing full well that you don't get to go into someone's bathroom after a designer has made it exquisite, after it shows up in the magazine, after you see the pictures on the socials. You never get to see the performative nature of it, and that's everything.
Yeah.
So the sales process, when you're pitching an idea, and this is what I would, look, this is what I would love specifiers to know about what you do. That this isn't something that was just like, hey, this will be cool, let's do that, and put it out on the shelf, mass produce it. This is not fast fashion. This is something that a great deal of engineering and work and skill and design goes into before they ever see it. What do you wish specifiers knew about your job that you don't think they know?
Every decision's strategic. At the end of the day, I think like we move very intuitively because this is our job, this is our passion, this is our career, this is what we've dedicated our lives to. But at the end of the day, there are always wilder choices to make. And whenever we're looking at something, let's say cambium, I think this is a good place to bring cambium in for sure. So that's a bathroom collection that we're launching at KBIS. Come see us. There is this beautiful fluted machine detailing on the hubs that is something formally we've been seeing in trend world, we'll say, for easily the last 5 years, if not longer. It's something that we've been seeing in those high-end places and now is starting to emerge in the market. We think we timed it pretty perfectly with this launch. It's been long awaited for us. We're very excited about it. Everything about the way that the faucet is made, the way that the finish takes to the final design geometry that comes off tool, everything about it was carefully selected and obsessed over by the folks on our team. And we had to fight tooth and nail to make sure that it was going to be basically perfect as soon as it comes out, so that it would work appropriately, so that it would feel good, so that you would want to touch it, so that you would enjoy to look at it. It's something that is a huge labor of love from us. It is really easy once rubber meets the road, as we've been saying. You lock a final design and then all of a sudden it goes into the Thunderdome basically to get pushed around by engineers. It's getting pushed around by manufacturers, all again to try to achieve something good. We all have our stake in this outcome. For design, it's really important that we are not afraid to throw our weight around and to advocate for that final decision, because if we concede on the wrong part, all of a sudden that investment could be for naught. And that's something that we take very, very seriously.
Yeah, that texture on cambium, that could have been canned multiple times. We fought every time to keep that texture on and say, like, and we know it's a pain in the butt to manufacture, but like, it's worth it. Yeah. It's gonna look great, and you're gonna see, why this makes sense, why this texture is necessary.
Yep. And finding allies in the business, right? That's the other piece about this, is like you're calling it like a sales pitch, and I think that's absolutely true. It's not just about what we want, it's about bringing everyone through the story to make sure that we're all on the same page, so that way when we go up to sell an idea, we already have people in our corner who have their own specialties, who can run numbers, who can get additional feedback, who can, advocate for different methodologies or different ways to manufacture something. Like, we do our best to socialize within the business so that we're not going in alone. We're going in with the business bought into our idea so that we can make it happen.
I think, too, the challenge of trying to design something that is going to be viewed favorably in Los Angeles and or New York in the same way that it's going to be viewed favorably in the Midwest or in the South. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. So knowing that you're not just, if we're talking domestically, knowing that you're designing for a very diverse audience and for specifiers who have clients that have different tastes, what's the thought process like in design, before you ever get to sales, before you ever get to the design itself? Do you think about, and I think we talked about this when we had our call previously, my background's in radio. And before, music testing for what music a rock station would play in Dallas would have a different audience than a music test in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And because of that, you would get different programming prior to what radio is now. But back in the day, that's how they used to decide. How do you view regionality, geography, and different demographics, psychographics, and lifestyle?
This is going to be a weird example, but ideally we create a versatile product. not something that's like so specific that it only exists. Like my sister's bathroom is octopus themed. So if I ask my sister what kind of faucet she wants, like, oh, I want an octopus faucet. Well, we're not gonna make an octopus faucet.
Too bad.
But so what we could do is look at like nautical hardware, ship instruments, those like brass castings, railings with those big like spherical kind of joints on them, and like, okay, we could start there. Start scribbling some stuff down. Where maybe we're not literally making like, a steampunk pipe faucet, but it's something that references that, and depending on what finish is big. Finish can really swing a design, in one room or another room, in one style or another style. But like, yeah, if we come up with something that is inspired by, I'm using the octopus example, inspired by, nautical hardware, well, but not so literally, you could put a brush gold finish on it, and okay, that kind of reminds me of the sea. I could put that in my octopus bathroom. But you put a matte black finish on it, okay, that's kind of industrial. I could put that in like this loft that I'm working on. You put a polished nickel finish on it. That's like this really kind of chic, stately looking traditional faucet. So I mean, finish is big, but we're coming up with a shape that tries to be as versatile as possible.
Yeah.
That is going to hopefully, check the boxes for a bunch of people.
And even before we get into the physical product realm, I mean, we do a huge style study within Moen that we invest in so that we can get good information from all across the country from designers. And then, again, we go through a similar research process that we do with the product of saying, okay, you like it, you don't like it, great. Why? Do you like it? Will your clients like it? Would you specify it? We're asking this whole rung of questions, but we're just talking about lifestyles. And then from there, we're able to take that data, again, working way, way, way ahead of present day. It helps us contextualize so that we can come up with those targets. So for example, Sam gave our basically breakdown of how Smith was conceived, from like concept at the library all the way up to like final production intent. Even before that, the style study was driving our direction towards a tailored traditional style, and to say, hey, there's something in the market that's coming. Traditional is evolving from this kind of classical Victorian, spirally curly, maximal application. It's tightening up. We're getting really detail focused. Okay, what does that look like? So that was, again, another jumping off point. We're constantly running these different projects internally that are style focused, product focused, concept focused, innovation, the whole nine. We're very busy.
Where does the market-driven data come from? Does it come from showrooms? Does it come from designers? Does it come from end user? Does it come from the customer? And I try to imagine that you would have something akin to a failure file, or you know what I mean? Like you know what's successful because it sells.
Yeah.
And then no one ever has to question. But then you have things that didn't work before, and sometimes someone says, hey, I have a great idea. I saw something once. Let's go back and look at that. And you can look at things, and over time, you can evaluate. I think that market-driven data is one of the most important tools a company has. And I would imagine that you are the beneficiaries of that kind of information. Where does it come from, and how do you use it?
It comes from a lot of other designers, showrooms, what's popular in the area, regional. What finishes are working really well, what finishes not so great anymore.
Yeah.
Like kind of like how what used to be your like Mediterranean bronze finish is now turning kind of matte black, but
And then coming back.
And then
again.
And then coming back, but
yeah.
It comes from all over the place. We go to shows like this and see, what we keep seeing over and over again, and make notes of that. We go to shows in Milan, it's a huge one, and trying to focus on what the trends look like over there compared to over here, and like what was happening there 4 or 5 years ago, and like what's now starting to happen over here. But we try to look at all those different avenues and put together reports. And
it's all valuable at the end of the day, right? Like it's when you go into research, and we have an awesome consumer insights group that we work with very closely. It's the most important thing is to understand what you want to know and from whom. And so we have the ability to collaborate with this group and to be able to probe all of these different consumer sets, from the consumer to the pro to the designer to the showroom, right? We can really like dig in to get all sorts of information. And we do regularly. We're constantly checking in. It's something that is, honestly, it's such a privilege to be able to get such great information.
Yep.
And again, to that point, we keep talking about like a negative response or a bad answer or a we don't like this. Like it is super powerful to have that kind of information in our arsenal, because at the end of the day, it paints a full picture. We're not just looking for good news. We're looking for bad news too, because at the end of the day, data is just information and it's what you do with it. And we like to be as realistic as possible about like the reception to the work that we're doing across the board.
And listen, we talked about this before. Ultimately, you're delivering the most important resource next to air, right?
Yeah.
It's just how you do it,
Yeah.
and the experimental nature of how it's done, right? And if you put it in terms like that, to drill down a little bit more, I'm fascinated by the process. And I think it's because we don't talk about the process nearly enough. Like, how did it wind up in a showroom? How did that design get selected over all of the others? And I think it's interesting, Sam, you're talking about European influence. And I think there was a day when American design was exported primarily. Now I think we're importing international design way more than we used to. How does that influence the manner in which you approach the design? You're listening to KBIS Confidential, live conversations from KBIS 2025 from the KBIS podcast studio. We'll be right back. Hey, pros, designers, builders, contractors, if you're not using AJ Madison Pro, you're leaving time and money on the table. AJ Madison Pro is the ultimate appliance solution for professionals who need fast, reliable access to top brands without the headache of back orders. Thanks to the in-stock promise, you get products you need ready to ship immediately so your projects stay on track. With nationwide shipping and delivery, AJ Madison's massive logistic network ensures your appliances arrive exactly when and where you need them. No delays, no surprises. And with over 150 top brands, this is your one-stop shop for all things appliances. Their team of industry experts provides personalized service to help you select the perfect appliance for your projects, ensuring a seamless experience from start to finish. Plus, here's an insider tip. Qualified builders and architects gain access to exclusive trade programs with significant savings on select luxury brands. AJ Madison Pro handles the registration for you, so you get the best deals, no extra work required. Join AJ Madison Pro today at ajmadison.com/pro and start streamlining your projects with ease.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. When we look at macro trends across the board, it's undeniable that we're living in a global era. I would say that the trends coming over from Europe, at least as I've been brought up through the industry, they've been coming over from Europe since before we were as globally socialized as we are now through social media. But I also think that now we're starting to see some of the cool design culture that's happening in the States, some of that distinctive regional culture that we've been talking about. We're starting to see that kind of go back across the pond in the other direction. So we are starting to see this cross-pollination that's happening. And by the way, it's not just Europe, right? Global trade's been happening for centuries. And when we look at that global trade, there is crazy influence. I was actually just at the Kimball Art Museum a couple weeks ago. There was a Dutch Masters painting exhibit. I have a point, I promise. I happened to walk into a lecture with an art historian, And I was like, oh, this is crazy, perfect timing. I'll just come and sit in on this lecture that got rescheduled for snow. There had been snow in Texas, and they, couldn't get out on the road. Respect. And this lecture was done by this art historian who does not just study Dutch paintings. She studies the objects in still lifes and portraits and where those objects come from, because Amsterdam was the biggest port in the world for a time. And all of a sudden you're looking at Chinese porcelain, and you're looking at these shells from India that come from the Indian Ocean, where the species don't exist in the Atlantic Ocean. There's no way that they could have gotten there without that global influence, right? So I don't want to box us in with the idea that European collaboration is the only way. There's been cultural cross-pollination happening globally for certainly longer than we've been alive here. And now we're all kind of parsing it apart to see, where are these trends coming from? There's Japanese influence in Scandinavian. That Scandinavian influence comes over here. We call it Scandinavian. From a designer perspective, it's important that we're able to parse those two things apart and say, well, for us, let's go back to the source. Let's go back to the well. Let's look at Japanese designers. Let's look at what's been going on in interiors there. And let's look at what's going on in the Netherlands and in those Scandinavian countries to get a sense of, what's happening. It's interesting because all of that referential information then comes to us, and we suddenly have this huge playground of motifs and materials and finishes and lifestyles that we're able to pull from to influence what we're working on. And when we cross-reference that with our internal cultural macros, say in North America, which is our studio's focus, you start to paint a really rich and robust picture that has a lot of information from all over the place, but the focus and the final outcome is just supposed to be simple. It's supposed to evoke that attraction. It's supposed to activate and cause a very, transcendent kind of feeling, even if people don't necessarily know why. It's important for us to, have as much information to play with as possible, market data or otherwise.
I love that too, because I think it comes down to eliciting a response,
Yeah.
generating a response. We talked about that a great deal, and I know that it's very, very important to you. And I think it's important too to recognize that for designers, Moen product is the tool, it's the paint, it's what they use to craft their work. It's what they're using to create that incredible design that ultimately makes their benefactor so thankful. And it's what drives the industry. And I think the more tools that they have at their disposal, what I've also found is that this idea, I think I mentioned this when we were talking before, and I know I've talked about it on the show. Years and years ago, there was a window of time at every design event where every panel, there was at least one that was like, how do we reach millennials? What is it that millennials want? How do we get millennials engaged in design? Because some generations engage sooner, some earlier. Millennials weren't engaging, and designers were just in a quandary. How do we get them to engage? And everyone was complaining about millennials. And then it came out that what millennials wanted, what was important to them, is a connectivity with an object. Something that was important to them, whether it was sneakers or a watch or a faucetry or a piece of furniture, furnishings, clothing. They wanted something that they could connect to. And that poured gasoline on this idea of connectivity to your surroundings and a relationship. And then designers had to learn how to build a relationship between product and client in their design. And then manufacturers had to learn how to create a product that could elicit that kind of response, which is what we're talking about. And I think that millennial design idea is going to be with us for generations, because I think it's important. It's what makes somebody fall in love again with a Moen product.
I hope so. Yeah.
Right? How do you make someone fall in love with your product? And that starts with falling in love with it yourself. Do you have that relationship with your design?
I could.
Go off,
The
Sam.
house If you go on Zillow and find the house I grew up in from 1990 and look at the pictures today and look in the bathroom, it has the same faucet that I used, that I grew up with. It's a Moen faucet, and it's lasted over 30 years. And I think because of that, because it had a crystal, it was that dated, blocky, it had the crystal handle. There's something so cool. One of my dream projects, which hasn't happened yet, is designing a new crystal handle. But, that's not a classically beautiful or attractive faucet, but it has there's really something sentimental to me about that. And that's why, I don't know, when I'm shopping, why do I pick things? Why do I fall in love with something? I think it's because, it reminds me of something. It has a certain aura. That faucet has an aura about it. It's not just something on the shelf that I think looks pretty, or it's not like the, what someone's telling me, this is the latest design trend. But I want something that's like kitschy and, dated, but there's like a reason for it. It almost becomes like a little, oddity. Like is something that has a story behind it. That's why I like things. That's why I fall in love with products.
I feel like I have to plug, this is a study or a way to talk about art, and it's basically 4 stages of wonder. And I learned about this in school from Cahill, and it was truly brilliant and life-changing in the way that I experience work, because as designers and people of the craft, we look at things really slowly, and we commune with them, and we observe them and make snap judgments maybe and describe them. We're trying really hard to be objective about it, but once all that objectivity is gone and done, there's this last stage, and that last stage is wonder. Does it transcend me? Does it take me somewhere? Does it remind me of something? It's almost that scene at the end of Ratatouille, where he's the critic is taken to his childhood of eating home cooked food, but he's in this upscale restaurant with this beautiful presentation. Does this really nail down what it feels like to be a person? Does this nail down what it feels like to be a person of this time? Does this remind me of something? Does it make me feel like the most actualized person of myself? We're always asking ourselves these questions as it relates to trends and materials and treatments.
And I hope after this, more people understand that faucet design isn't just some folks throwing things together, one handle from here, another handle from here, just piecing together a faucet. But there are humans, there are people, we are 2 of them, who it's our jobs, and we love it, and to carefully create and take the time to make something that, hopefully gets an emotional response from somebody.
Yeah. I wanted to sing.
Yeah.
You wanted to sing. Well, look, and that's one of the things that we just don't talk about enough, is an emotional response to faucetry, right? To plumbing. You'll have someone go in and do a sit test. Got to do a sit test on that stuff. Got to make sure it feels right. But you don't often hear about people going to the showroom to make sure that the faucet feels right. But how important is that? I mean, look, Sam, it reminds you of your childhood home.
Yeah.
And I get that. I get that vibe, that feel. That should be as important to the end user, to the consumer, as it is to the designers, because the designers care. And that's why I think, look, there should be a fit test, a sit test, a feel test for faucets, where you actually go in and it's like, does it fit? Because you're going to be using it every morning, every night. There are not many things in our lives that we use at least twice a day, every single day.
Start and end the day with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So that being said, what's next? What's on the drawing board right now? What would you like to do? What are you manifesting? What would you like to see? Do you have any projects maybe you can't talk about, but anything you're really excited about?
That's a great one.
I'm excited about, but take that texture for example, but the texture on cambium, but people are starting to like more expressive designs, whether that's a texture or a finish or like an inlaid terrazzo pattern on the handle. But like that is exciting stuff, and it's really, I'm looking forward to doing more of that, doing more like art pieces, little mini sculptures that are just more exciting.
Yeah. I feel like that's like the perfect answer. Like how far are people willing to go, and the goal is to meet them there.
I love that. And that's the way it should be. So listen, as we wrap this up, and if you're listening, first of all, thank you. Thank you for coming to KBIS 2025. Go to the show notes, and you will find a link to Moen's designs. You'll find a link to all of the designs that we discussed here so you can see them for yourself. But seeing them isn't enough. You have to go to your favorite local showroom, and if that happens to be AJ Madison, then they will have what you're looking for. So go check it out. Go feel it. Be determined to make sure that the things that maybe you didn't pay enough attention to in your home, like a faucet, is something that excites you, because it should. Everything that you work into your design through your designer should excite you, shouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the sustainable choice.
It is.
Yeah. So thank you, KBIS, for having us out. Thank you, AJ Madison. Thank you, Moen. I love this. I loved having this chat. You guys are the best. Thank you. And thanks for listening. Convo by Design, at Convo by Design with an X on Instagram. And this is great. Thank you, Sam, Alisha. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
It was a pleasure. You guys are the best.
Thank you.
What a remarkable experience. What a great conversation. I believe that KBIS is one of the annual must-attend events, full stop. Not just for all the reasons I listed before, but so many others as well. KBIS is the pulse of the industry in America. It represents a true cross-section of disciplines. You will see architects, landscape architects, designers, contractors, design build firms, hospital, education, prison design specialists, all looking for new products to specify and unique ways to use them. Thank you to the NKBA, KBIS, Emerald, Flying Camel, AJ Madison, and all of the amazing creatives who came out to the show. And especially those who came to watch some of our live presentations in the KBIS podcast studio. Just extraordinary. Thank you for listening to Convo by Design presents KBIS Confidential. As always, please join in the conversation on Instagram at Convo by Design with an X, or if you'd prefer to email me, please do convobydesign@outlook.com. Until next time, stay focused and rise above the chaos.